interviews to get to at 6:43. Let's go to our KUAM Zoom room on the link of the Breeze 93.9, where we have from the Catholic schools, Superintendent Juan Flores, and from Harvest Christian, Jeremy Zajicek.
We saying that right?
I'm sorry. I figured let me say it really wrong so you could correct me.
Yeah, pretty close. Zychek. It sounds simple, but it doesn't sound simple.
So the J is silent.
Yep.
Got it. All right. All right. So thanks for coming on. Obviously, we're talking reopening of schools. We'll start with Superintendent Juan Flores. So FD, third day of classes about to go. Just, I guess, if you could, how was that and everything running smoothly? Well, obviously, we ran a story, a lot of great pictures. What's your takeaway on that?
Most of it, I think, is being pretty smooth. By the way, I just want to mention that the only reason why I'm participating in this is because it's an election season. So anyway, and I'm not running for an election for any office, but I think the students at the school are definitely going through a period of adjustment, especially in terms of keeping the social distancing, because that's, I think, pretty tough, especially because they haven't seen each other for a while, and they want to make sure that they get the most out of being back in school. But for the most part, that's been going well. This morning, I'm heading up to Dominican Catholic School because they have their first day of classes today. So we're looking forward to that.
3 days in at FD, were there any lessons learned from the opening, or was everything just smooth sailing?
I don't know that. Well, I think the lessons, probably the lessons that I've mentioned to the principal, is we just have to reinforce the social distancing rules, especially when the guys are going in and out of class or when they're hanging out during the breaks. Those are the tempting times, I think, when it's hard to just keep in mind that you ought to stand in line. I mean, I think some of us even forget that when we're in church, right? That we've got to keep our distance from others. But I did notice that every student and faculty member had a mask on, and things seemed pretty clean at the school. So I think that's been encouraging.
Okay.
I guess we'll go over to Mr. Zychek. What's the status with Harvest reopening?
Yeah, we start 1 week from tomorrow. So that's our regular start date. We welcome students back Thursday, the 13th. Today, in fact, in just about an hour or so, we start orientation, their teachers and training. So we've welcomed back new staff the past 2 days, and now all of our staff is going to join us here, and we're going to do some training. We put a lot of work and effort into following the guidelines, doing everything we can to help keep students, parents, faculty, and staff safe. And now comes that training element. So Juan's a little bit further ahead of us, but we're looking forward to jumping in today with that training. You know, we've, in the past day or two, we've invited parents onto the camp for various things like purchasing uniforms. In our experience with the signage and just the island has done a good job in how, what social interactions look like. Everyone's very cautious. Everyone's excited, of course, to come back to school, but very cautious, wearing masks, doing the right things. And so we know there's going to be an adjustment period with our students as well, all the way down from pre-K up to 12th grade. But that's going to be one of the things they have to focus on in the classroom for the first couple of days to reinforce those new rules of operation.
Guys, was there any involvement from public health? I know they put out the guidelines, but in implementing these guidelines in anticipation of the schools, both your schools reopening, was there any inspection or dialogue with public health?
Well, I've been very encouraged with my communication with Art St. Augustine, and got to him for this week anyway, the protocols that Father Duenas, the Dominican Catholic School, will be following, and then probably today or tomorrow we'll give him the protocols for the rest of the schools, which have all been established. And they all are following the protocols we already had reviewed by the Physicians Advisory Group. The schools just had to articulate the specific ways in which they will follow those protocols.
Do you guys have bus riders? And if so, what are the protocols that you guys have in place?
Well, I sent a message to Art the other day asking his staff to review what's going to happen with the buses. possibilities are, of course, at one end is that we have the full capacity of the buses in terms of ridership, as long as the kids wear masks, to as few as only a third of the buses being occupied according to social distancing. It's creating an incredible challenge to DPW because of the numbers, but it may be that the numbers, because of DOE's ridership needs and our students, may work themselves out so we could still have buses with social distancing and have those buses be safe. They're going to be sanitized after every run. We just are hoping that they get done, in a timely manner.
Jeremy, I saw that you had something to say about the question I posed about public health involvement in the reopening of Harvest.
Yeah. We don't have any buses, so we don't have that hurdle to overcome. But regarding Department of Health and Human Services, we've been in contact with a number of governmental agencies. We're very grateful to get the guidance by DPHSS. And yeah, anytime we've had a question and needed an answer, they've been very responsive. So it's been a good partnership as far as getting information, getting the plan submitted to them for reopening.
Mm-hmm. Before I get into enrollment numbers, I wanted to talk about teachers and whether or not you are experiencing any shortfalls with staffing, with concerns from staffers who aren't, necessarily comfortable with returning to school.
Yeah, there's always some of that. There's a range of comfort, just kind of like anything, probably like politics, I suppose.
I don't know why that was
any
funny.
fear. And there's some staff that do have some fear about it. And we've been working with them, involving them in the process early on to help them, provide input into our plan. Of course, what we took from EPHSS was the minimum standard, and then we wanted to make everyone from our staff comfortable as well as our parents. And so trying to work through that. As far as a staff shortage, we're blessed to have every position filled this year and ready to hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm. Juan?
Well, most of the schools are fully staffed. I'm still getting resumes from people who are interested in teaching positions in the Catholic schools. Some of them are recent graduates of UOG. And I think one of the things that some schools have been doing is if there's anxiety on the part of the teachers, then the schools try to adjust and deal with those, like the occupancy in the classroom, to make sure that we're not jamming those classes with students and we're following protocols in class, looking at the face masks or shields, or in some cases, in some schools, they're actually putting up plexiglass partitions so the teachers can teach more easily without a mask on. It all depends on, the school's capacity to pay for those things and also the sizes of the classrooms. So for many of the schools, especially the older schools with large classrooms, that hasn't been a problem. It's the newer classrooms that are not as big as the old classrooms that used to accommodate 40 or 50 kids that I think are a challenge.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that the Guam Department of Education has used their education stabilization funds is for children that may be experiencing anxiety, emotional distress. Are those funds also being used for private schools? And if not, what programs do you guys have in place to address those sorts of issues that may come up?
The funds ideally have been equitably distributed, or the services have been equitably distributed. So actually, per student, every non-public student is getting the same amount of services as a public school student. And the three priorities set by the Federal Programs Office: safety, health and safety, the enhancement of distance learning, and then social and emotional well-being. I think the challenging thing right now is, although the grant award notification came out at the end of May, most of those funds have not been expended to date. So we haven't really we've seen a lot of activity with the Federal Programs Office, but we haven't really seen most of those services come through yet. And I know the Catholic schools are, part of that plan was or part of that funding was to pay for PPEs, and most of the Catholic schools have gone out and purchased their own because the procurement of those supplies haven't gone through with DOE.
Is that the same for you, Jeremy?
Yeah, we've been in communication with Department of Education, and yeah, there's been some procurement issues of just getting things to Guam. And so we're in a similar boat, equitably distributed to us, the opportunity to apply for it and get approved for different, the three categories one had mentioned. But to date, just because of those procurement issues, we've not received much protective equipment. And so just so we're ready for opening, we've gone out and purchased those ourselves just to make sure we can ensure safety for staff, parents, and students.
Was this delay in the distribution of these funds something that you guys had anticipated? So were you counting on these funds to get them in a timely manner, or did you kind of figure, because if you look around everywhere with these CARES Act funds, some of these programs are just being stood up now?
I think from a business standpoint, you always hope there's plan A, and then you have to execute plan B with contingencies. So we're hoping, and there's still for us, I know Juan started a few of his schools this week. We have another week yet to come, and so maybe some things will start to trickle in.
Well, I know.
Yeah, we've just been used to doing plan B and making sure that we're taking care of our students.
I know when we had John Fernandez on a couple of weeks ago, he was mentioning that in terms of the procurement for the PPEs, there is, a nationwide shortage because, everybody's starting school. So I don't know if that's the problem, but, I think we're going to be having John Fernandez on sometime this week. Oh, today, actually. So we can ask him about the delay
We can.
with procurement of PPEs and the other services that he indicated would be provided to all schools, whether public or private.
Gentlemen, I wanted to ask, because we see this so many times in the comments, and I know you guys both have younger kids in your systems. People want to know, what are we doing with recess? And, I see it again so many times. How are they going to maintain social distancing when the kids are on the playground? So how do you guys plan to address the kind of the kids will be kids during recess thing, and how do we enforce that? I mean, God, it sounds sounds almost like a police thing, right? How do we enforce that social distancing with, little kids?
Yeah, there's a couple of things we're doing to help with that. First of all, we're keeping kids in cohorts so that you're limiting exposure to other kids. Even in the classroom, we know it's going to be a challenge for a 5-year-old to wear a mask, 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day. So that's going to be a kind of a constant reminder to teachers. This is going to be the A1 goal for teachers. We know from DPHS and the CDC that being outside, there's less of a risk. And so there's different things you can do, playing non-contact sports, maybe soccer, so you're not touching the ball. Right. And then we plan on, we have some equipment to sterilize and sanitize our playground equipment between usage of each cohort group.
Juan?
Yeah. The other thing is that many of the schools now are organizing those recess periods, so not everybody is out at the same time.
Right.
So you reduce the number of kids outside, reduce the chance that the kids will have interaction. Although when I first suggested to the physicians advisory group that we discourage interaction, they corrected me that we really can't do that. We just need to discourage a prolonged interaction. And make sure that we're safe. But even with PE classes, some of the teachers are planning to go outside as long as the students are far apart from each other, and if they have to take their masks off, they're not next to each other.
Right.
So they can still run. They can still. I've encouraged teachers I'm working with the folks at San Vicente. I've encouraged the teachers to sometimes just take the kids out for a walk, and be 6 feet apart, but go for a walk around the field. Just so they're outside and getting some fresh air.
Right. What we're talking about with recess and how you're staggering it so it's not all the kids out at the same time. Did you guys kind of do the same thing with lunch periods? And then was it difficult in trying to stagger these lunch periods in a way so you don't get kids eating lunch at like 9 in the morning?
Yeah, we are.
9 in the morning. Snack time. 9 in the morning is
certain-
snack, and then 11 o'clock is lunch, and then at 1:30 is snack for the younger kids anyway.
Got it.
They have snacks all day, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, lunch does have specific challenges. The guidance said, we know one of the most risky times is when you remove a mask. And so another challenge will be having kids in the lunchroom. Numbers are drastically reduced. Many of them will eat in their classroom, but then also not talking when they're eating lunch. If you've ever been in a lunchroom at a school,
Oh man.
you can just say anything you want to say. Well, that's going to be a little bit different this year.
Jeremy, how's enrollment at Harvest Christian Academy now?
Enrollment is still fairly strong for us, which we're very grateful for. We've had a few people. We're providing a limited online option for some parents and students. We've had a few take advantage of that, but overall enrollment has been fairly steady, and we're very grateful for that.
And so, what about how are you? Are you staggering classes? Because like at my son's school, only 16 students are allowed face to face, and the rest have to go distance learning.
Yeah.
How are you guys?
so-
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're in the process of finalizing the parents' elections this week, and so we don't have those final numbers yet. At minimum, we're following the DPHS guidelines for social distancing in the classroom, and that might even, depending on how many students or how many parents select the online option for their students.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen. I guess in closing, maybe a message to your the students, the parents, about the reopening of your respective schools.
We've had meetings with parents the last couple of weeks, and we have orientation all this week. And one of the things that I've encouraged the parents to do is, if they think their kids are going to be uncomfortable with a mask, to start practicing, having them use the mask for an hour at a time or a couple hours at a time. The other thing that I've encouraged them to consider is, Jeremy mentioned that most of their students are going to be in cohort groups, and I think that's true of most of the kids in the Catholic schools. So I've encouraged the parents to consider that once the kids are in school, to consider reducing exposure to other groups outside of school. So I'm not saying that they should be in total isolation, but really, if there's no need to go to the mall or no need to go to some place where people are not wearing their masks, don't do it.
Right.
Make sure that the kids are safe. And of course, as always, I tell parents to encourage their kids to wash their hands. I won't say it as roughly as Chris would, but they should wash
And their thumbs.
But real quickly, is there
Yeah,
any
that's
sort of medical requirements for teachers or staff or even students for returning to school? Like
Yeah,
COVID?
for sure. We have a school nurse. There's different protocols of staff need to check in, along with the guidance from DPHSS is a daily check, temperature, and COVID symptoms. So, yeah, certainly enhanced features this year just to make sure that everyone's healthy. And then also, if you're carrying a fever, there's enhanced protocols for staying home for a longer period of time, and in even some cases, getting doctor's clearance to come back to work.
All right, Jeremy, go ahead and give your closing, if you would, just to the Harvest family out there.
Yeah, so grateful for the parents. We've been communicating with them throughout the summer. It's been challenging because as we've been waiting on information from different agencies. As we get that and send that out to parents, we're very grateful for their interaction, their comments, their feedbacks. We do consider it a family, so I want to thank them for it. Thanks for the trust. The students, we're excited. The last quarter of last year was difficult to have this campus quiet, no students, and we did distance online learning. So in the past couple of days, as we've ramped up to see kids on campus or parents on campus getting uniforms, yeah, man, that's just exciting stuff. And so it's going to be different. It's going to be different, but we're looking forward to it. And it's going to be, kind of a return to a bit of normalcy for kids, I think, which is really important. And then the last thing is just thanking our staff. It's just amazing the stuff that they've been able to figure out, the hurdles they've overcome just to make this all possible. So faculty and staff, thanks for your hard work in making this all happen.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And as we get
Thanks.
closer to reopening, and then maybe even after, we'll bring you guys on again to check on you guys.
Or progress report.
Right.
All right.
Bree's going to
Sounds
get her
good.
red
Thank you,
pen.
guys.
Look out. Thank you. All
Take
right.
care. Be safe.
Wash your hands and your thumbs. It's 7:03. We'll take a short break and we'll